Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on Oracle on AWS. Thank you for watching. My name is Wisa Maswana, and I'm a solutions architect here in the Middle East and Africa. I'm here based out of Cape Town. Let's get started. Amazon Relational Database Service continues to be the most popular choice for Oracle DBAs that are looking to migrate their workloads onto the cloud. In today's session, we are going to go over the available options of hosting an Oracle database on AWS. You would learn how to take advantages of the advanced features that are available on RDS and AWS. And lastly, we will take a look at the disaster recovery options with RDS for Oracle. Let's jump right in. Let us take a look at the available options when hosting your Oracle database on Amazon Web Services. When moving your Oracle database to Amazon Web Services, customers have two options. They can either host it on Amazon EC2 instance, or they can host it on Amazon RDS for Oracle. Now, this diagram here sums it up quite nicely. The orange areas are the areas that you as a customers will be managing by yourself. And the gold areas are the areas that are managed by AWS on your behalf. Now, you would see that running your Oracle on EC2 offers the greatest degree of control as it gives you direct access to the underlying operating system. And you have all the configuration options that are available for Oracle. Of course, with that great control comes great responsibility of managing up your own backups, doing your own patching, and setting up your own high availability. While these tasks are critical to ensure business continuity, they do not add value to your business. It is work that is repeatable, mundane, and work that AWS can take care of. By moving to Oracle Amazon RDS, you would see that AWS in this case would take care of these routine, mundane tasks, but critical, and they manage these on your behalf. And this allows you to then focus on what differentiates you from your competitor, and you can work on your application and your schema. Now, how do you decide which option to go for? Whilst we have a table here which highlights the features for you to compare, it is always advisable that you always should consider running your Oracle workloads on RDS first. This is because this will allow you to focus on the business value task and allows you the opportunity and the freedom to work on your schema optimization. And this is an option that you can also consider when there are limited in-house database expertise. You should only consider running your Oracle workloads on Amazon EC2 when you feel that you want to have control to the underlying, and also when you feel that there are certain features that are important to your business but are not yet quite available on the RDS for Oracle database. Those are the conditions that you can consider running on EC2. Take a look at best practices of running your Oracle workloads on RDS Oracle. We are going to look at 4 key areas here: security, performance, availability, and configuration. Now, let's first take a look at security. There is never going to be one thing that you are going to do that is going to help you prevent unauthorized access to the data in your database. It's going to require you some effort from your part, and it's going to require some combination of actions. One of the things that you'll have to do is to build a secure parameter around your database. Amazon Virtual Private Cloud is our key infrastructure component that allows you to do just that. The key idea here is the database would be running in the private network. Your data is secure, running in the private network, and then your applications can be running in the public facing networks, and they communicate to your database that's sitting in the private network. Now, you want to prevent direct access to your database over the internet. One of the key features that are available to RDS Oracle is the capability called outbound network access, which you can use to manage data egress. When talking about preventing unauthorized access, the encryption of data becomes part of this conversation. Now, within AWS, we provide data in transit for all database engines. You can enable SSL option on your RDS Oracle by simply adding the SSL option to the option group that is attached to your RDS Oracle instance. Now, we also support transport layer security version 1 and version 1. When you create a database, you would get a listener. Now, this listener allows for communication between your client and your database in an unencrypted manner. However, when you add the SSL option, you would get a second listener. Now, this listener would allow for traffic communication between the client and the database to be done in an encrypted manner. Now, this setup, what then it allows you is the possibility where you can say you want to then block all communications to your database that are non-encrypted. In this way, you can ensure that clients and database connect and communicate in a secure connection. This you can do by making some changes to your security groups, or you can also do this at the subnet level. Now, encrypting your data at rest is something that you would want to do. RDS encryption is achieved with integration with KMS. This allows you as a customer the option to use Amazon's own managed keys, or you can bring in your own keys. This is available across all engines and across all our versions. AWS has worked extensively to build in the encryption into the physical infrastructure layer so that this reduces the overhead in your own workloads. Now, you can enable encryption when you are creating the instance. Now, if you have already created an instance that is unencrypted and you would want to convert this instance to an encrypted instance, there is no direct option that you can turn on and turn off. What you have to do in this case is to take the snapshots of your unencrypted database, encrypt this snapshot, and then restore from this encrypted snapshot, and you would then be restoring to an encrypted instance. That is the current available options in how you move away from an unencrypted instance to an encrypted instance. Now, another type of security issue is the escalation of privileges. Oracle gives you some great capabilities in this regard. One of those is database auditing. Now, with database auditing, you can have the capability to now be able to answer questions like, when was table X dropped? Also, if you are observing some invalid logging ins that are happening in your environment, you can see where are these coming from. Whilst the database itself at the engine has built in these capabilities. Also at the API level, we have also made sure with the integration with CloudTrail that all APIs are against your RDS environment are kept and recorded. So with this, now it will allow you the capability of answering, but who created this database? Who made this database change? When was this database stopped or deleted? Or in some cases, when was a parameter change made? This is all made possible with all the APIs that are tracked and kept. Now, if we're going to be looking at the performance now, the majority of performance issues that we've seen in the RDS Oracle context has always been workload related. Now, there are various factors that are affecting the performance. It could be CPU, RAM. We're talking about things like the network throughput. So all of these can impact and affect the performance of your application. What we're saying here is that the key thing to remember is that you need to then perform a benchmark of your workload so that you can understand its baseline needs. What you then do is that you take what you've now known as your baseline and you create your monitoring and alerting so that when database is performing and all of those baseline metrics are then being breached, you can be alerted and be proactive in taking an action before your performance of your environment degrades. When planning your Oracle RDS deployment, it is highly recommended that you always should look at the memory optimized instant classes. This is because Oracle typically benefits from large amounts of memory. But keep in mind that if you have selected another instance family, you can modify and change the DB instance class at any time you feel like it. It will require a reboot or a failover if you are having a multi-AZ environment. Now, what all of this can allow you is the capability to then you can scale your compute capacity based on your workload needs. So you are not limited and to the options that you select and you selected the first time and then you are stuck with those options. You can adopt and make these changes as and when your capacity needs changes are required. Now, if you are going to be using specific parameters, we do advise that you create a parameter group. Now, you need to create this parameter group before you create your instance so that when you are creating your instance, you attach this parameter that you have created. with your unique specific parameters. Now let's talk about the availability. How do you pick a region? The major factor to consider when choosing a region is to take into account what latency can your application tolerate, and also data sovereignty. So those are the two key areas that many of our customers usually use to make a choice of which region to pick. Now, you would notice that our AWS global infrastructure footprint is growing at a fast, rapid pace. We currently have 25 regions with 80 availability zones, and we're still adding to this. So this choice would always not also be static. It can always change as we are also making these changes. Now, when it comes to RDS offers a high availability capability in the form of RDS Multi-Az. Now, this is a fully managed secondary instance in a different availability zone in the same region. It is synchronously replicated with the primary to ensure that it's kept up to date. It has its own unique EC2 and EBS resources, which are an exact copy of the primary instance. In the event that the primary instance has failed, an automatic failover is triggered. The secondary is promoted to be a primary instance. The CNAME is updated to now point to the new primary, and the old failed primary machine is replaced with a new healthy host. So in this case, it is also then so that it is brought back into the multi-AZ setup again. And all of this process, it happens between a minute to 2 minutes max. We automatically reinstate the secondary and rejoin and do the whole multi-AZ reconfiguration without any user intervention. Now, customers sometimes ask us, when do I use this multi-AZ option? Our recommendation is always, if the workload that you are running on your RDS Oracle database is critical to your business, then it is always recommended to run it in multi-AZ. Obviously, with the benefits of when an issue has happened, site itself, then you will be able to continue because we will do the failover with between a minute to 2 minutes, and you can continue with your business operations. Now, the biggest thing for any customers to do here in this space is to test their workloads. Now, we do provide some APIs for customers to run their own tests so that they are aware how would their application behave in the event that there is now a failover that is occurring. One of the other things you also want to ensure that your applications do not do is to cache your DNS entries, because if you do during the failover, when we have changed the CNAMEs to point to the new instance, your application could still be holding on to the old DNS entry that is pointing to the failed primary. So you want to ensure that you do not get stuck in this process. RDS uses EBS volumes. So basically, backups are snapshots of EBS. Now, we have two ways to perform backups on RDS. We have automated backups and manual backups. When you have enabled automatic backups, what happens is that RDS will take a snapshot once a day at the time that you have pre-selected. And this snapshot will be kept for a retention period of between 1 to 35 days. And also, archive redo logs would be sent to S3 at most every 5 minutes. Now, we do also offer the option where you can, at any time you feel the need, make manual snapshots. Now, these snapshots are kept until you as a customer decide you want to delete them. They don't have a retention period. Let's talk about configuration. When you migrate your workloads to RDS for Oracle, we want you to rethink the editions. You can save money by running on standard edition, but still get some good capabilities on RDS. Like, for example, the option of multi-AZ, it is available to also standard edition, and it is a cheaper option than the Oracle rack. If you think about things like encryption, you don't have to now pay an extra license for it. And in RDS, you can just let RDS encryption take care of this and manage this on your behalf. You can also perform tuning using the RDS and enhanced monitoring and performance insights instead of purchasing the Oracle diagnostic packs. Now, customers would sometimes also ask us, all right, I've got many databases. Do I now need to create a single parameter group per database instance, or do I just create one parameter group for all these database instances? Well, our recommendation here is that you should create a single parameter group for similarly configured instances. The key thing to take note of when you are working with parameter groups is to test the changes that you make to the parameters to see how it affects the behavior of your RDS instance. And also you must take note that when you do make changes to the static parameters, you would need to perform a reboot. You must do a reboot without failover if you are running your setup in the multi-Az instance before that static parameter change is applied. Now, it is very important to know what is going on in your database. With our integration to CloudWatch, you get to understand what is going on inside your database, and you can build in CloudWatch alerts so that you are notified when certain of your metrics that you are monitoring have reached the certain limit that you have configured. As an example, you can monitor CPU, you can decide to monitor memory utilization, or you can also monitor free storage. There's no one size fits all here. You as a customer can build these alerts based on your needs. As you would see there on the screen, we have an example of monitoring and being alerted when the free available space is below 1 gigs. This is but one of the examples, but there's definitely many options that you can configure in this area. Now, we do also offer RDS events. This informs you of the changes that are occurring in the entire RDS environment. As an example, you want to know when a backup is occurring. You can also perhaps want to know when this RDS instance has been restarted or when it went down. This is a change in the RDS environment and it is recorded in the RDS events. Now, RDS generates a number of these events and they are grouped into various categories. What this enables you is that the option as a customer to then subscribe through SNS to these categories and events so that you are notified when a certain event is occurring. And the RDS recommendations is a really, really nice feature where we look into your database and see how it behaves and see how this workload is operating. And then we give you some insights and advice as to what are the things that can make this environment run even better. In this space, we can see we will give you examples like the engine is out of date. So your engine that you are running on is behind. There's been a new engine that's been rolled out. You can be notified of this here. Or if you don't run your instance with encryption on. But there's more to this. And this is where you'd find that we also give advice on the best practices. And we will give you this guidance on how to apply these best practices. Now, let's talk about the improvements that have been made in the disaster recovery area. RDS Oracle has launched and improved 3 features that can be part of your disaster recovery strategy. We've continued to improve the read replicas. We've now also ordered and launched the capability to launch and manage mount mode read replica. And then we've extended the capability of our automatic backups to also now support cross-region use cases. Now let's take a look at these more closely. With a few clicks or an API call, you can create an Oracle read replica. When you do this action, RDS will automatically create a replica of your primary, and it will do all the necessary configuration to ensure then that this replica is kept in sync with the primary instance. The replicas are built on Oracle DataGuard physical standby technology. So they do require the Enterprise Edition license. Also, on top of that, the read replica, because it's using the DataGuard, you also need the DataGuard license on top of that. So you do need the Enterprise Edition license and DataGuard license. And you need this for both the source, which is the primary, and the replica. The communication between the primary and the replica is done over a dedicated secure channel so that at all times the replication traffic is encrypted. It is always encrypted. Now each primary can support up to 5 replicas, and these can be a mixture of in-region replicas and across-region replicas. RDS manages the DataGuard configuration on your behalf so that you don't have to manage the DataGuard broker. Now, the new capability of now you can launch mount mode replicas. Now, this is the feature where the customer still wants the capability and the benefit of having a DR like the read replica, but they may not need to scale their replica workload. So what they want to then do is just to have the database in mount stage ready. Should something happen, they will bring it up, but they won't be sending any traffic to do any reads there. It could be that the customer perhaps don't have the license. So when you don't have, unless you have your enterprise edition license, but you don't have the data guard license, then this is an option that you can set up and use. Like the read replica, this is a fully managed instance. It's also a data guard database. So it's also a data guard physical standby. And it can be promoted to from mount to read only, or from read only to read write. So, but when you do this, when you're promoting it or moving it from the mount to read, you need to ensure that you do have the required licenses that would support this. Because as we have mentioned, the read replica, because the database is in read mode, it requires the data guard license. So that is the key that you need to maintain here. So if you don't have the data guard license, keep the database in mount stage, and then you will only be required to have the enterprise license edition. Now we've enhanced the automatic backups to now support cross-region. So this is for customers that want to have a DR across regions, but they do not have the justification to be running another infrastructure in another environment. So the second region does have its own independent retention period. As an example, you can decide that on the primary region, you want the backups to be kept and maintained for a period of 30 days, but in the second region, they can be kept only for 7 days. Now, the last restore times are typically longer across the region than they are in region. This is because it takes a long time to ship the logs to the second region and to ensure that everything is working correctly across the regions. The API has been improved and updated so that you can now monitor the last restore time for both in region and across region. Now, in this table, we are just putting together the features of disaster recovery so that you can see them next to each other and you can review their RPO and their RTO. You would notice that in this table, as you go down the list, the RPO and RTO, it starts to come down. But you should observe in the licensing column that the cost will start to increase as you would require extra additional licensing. Now, this is something that each company and each organization is going to have to test for themselves to see which of the options available for disaster recovery matches their needs. Now, that was a quick overview on RDS Oracle. It is by no means a substitute for you to testing out Oracle by yourself on RDS. You can simply spin up an instance and test your particular use case to see how the system behaves. Thank you for spending the time with me, and have a great day further.